Welcome back to Law News Network. I'm your host, Heather Hansen, and we have another exclusive interview, this time with Dr. Frieda Birnbaum, who goes by Dr. Frieda. She is a research psychologist here to talk to us and has some fascinating insight on David DJ Criato, the case that we've been following for the past few weeks. She also has some insight on Julie Stensky, the girlfriend that we heard from this week. So welcome, Dr. Frieda.
Thank
it's
you
so
so
nice
much.
to have you here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I know you've been following this case, and you told me just as we were about to begin that you wanted to talk to me and talk to our audience more specifically about profiles.
Yes.
For each of the players.
Yes.
Tell me about your profile for David DJ Criato.
He had a lot of paranoia. He was extremely jealous and went into this rage of needing to know where his girlfriend was, Julia, what she was doing, who she was talking to, and went on social media to make sure that she was telling him the truth. So he was already setting himself up to be in an area of a lot of miscontent and having a lot of problems in his life.
And the prosecution sort of laid that out with Julie's testimony last week, saying that he actually had her say that the prosecutor's a woman, actually had her say, you know, he was paranoid, for sure.
Yes.
And then laid out that the weekend before there had been some arguments. She went back to school, and that
Yes.
night is where everything sort of came to a head.
Absolutely. She was able to see him every other weekend, which meant that when she came, she did not want his child around. His child was there. She went into a jealous rage about the child, and she said she can't do this, and I'll quote, "I can't do this anymore. I can't go on like this." And she went back deciding to break up with him, and he knew that. So he was very, very upset about the fact that he would lose this relationship because Julia, was a sociopath, which means she was narcissistic, self-centered, a huge ego, and that was also something that got in the way of their relationship. So she immediately went ahead and told him, "Look, I can't talk to you right now. I have to study. I will not be able to answer the phone. I'm going to disconnect." Instead, he called her 9 times, left 9 messages, and was up to 1 in the morning to make sure that she was not talking to anyone. But guess what? She was, and that drew him into this spin of a jealous rage again.
So let's stick with DJ, and then I do want to talk to you about Julie, because all of the narcissism and sociopath thing is certainly interesting, and I think our audience definitely agrees with that. But with DJ, do you think that he was a good father, or do you think this was always sort of bubbling up in the background?
He was absolutely a wonderful father. Even his ex-girlfriend said he couldn't have been better. But he did have moments, she said, that weren't so great. But you know what? We all have our moments. We can't be perfect, especially with kids. When they act out, you know what that means. So that's a problem right there. But in general, he was a wonderful, wonderful father. But here's the rest of the profile. His son, Brandon, who was really afraid of the dark. He was a child that acted out in school, and he was even in play therapy to help him with that. And he liked the Hulk, who was also someone who was proactive physically in attacking people, and he identified with that. So he also created rage when DJ needed to discipline him. So with that combination of his girlfriend talking to someone else, his son was the one that his girlfriend didn't want and was destroying the relationship. His son could have very easily been acting out at that moment, and that moment of rage could have precipitated.
I got it.
Thank you very much. Precipitated. That happens with me once in a while. An event here of jealousy, rage, paranoia, and this momentary feeling that he was going to do something to stop all that. And that's what happened at that time. And that's why when he did, and if he did, do this to his child, it was a momentary situation. It was not a situation when there was an intent to do any harm or damage to this child.
So you think that this is a case, it's pled as a first-degree murder case, and you just don't think that, you think that his state of mind was such that he could not create intent? Is that?
There was no intent there. He was basically a good father, and he loved his son. But when we're in this moment of rage, we have this misconception of the environment around us. And that's why I'm saying this moment of rage. And then we go ahead and we do things that we're sorry for later. Mm-hmm. It's not that we get pleasure out of it. It's not that we wanted this to happen. Often when people have this jealous rage and they murder someone, it's only because there's an instrument or something close to them that they can go ahead and do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't even do something like that. So this is part of this mystery of what's going on with this case, where we see a child that's murdered, but we also see a father that couldn't have been a better father to him.
We're getting some pushback on that, because a lot of the people are saying that he didn't lock the doors all the time, and that he had, brought this girlfriend in who didn't care for. But I think that, we're probably holding him to a higher standard than perhaps he was capable of. What do you think about that? The fact that he didn't always lock the doors, that he brought in a girl that clearly didn't care for him to be in his life, that he would often pawn him off to different family members. Do you think that that shows that he was not truly invested as a father?
We're talking about a 23-year-old, right. Remember, and how old is she, 19?
Yeah, at the time she was 17.
You know, and your brain doesn't even develop fully till you're 26. So here they are, here he is actually doing the best that he can do. Yes, all of us don't do things 100%. And when you have a partner in your life and they don't agree with the way you take care of your child, that sometimes becomes secondary. I'm not saying that it should, but your mind is clouded with the fact that you also want to have a life. She didn't do anything abusive to this child, but she did say that she can't go on like this. She will not continue this relationship if this child is in the picture. And at that point in time, and her hatred for children, which she did post on the social media, was something that should have clued him in. But because he was paranoid, and because he was someone who was extremely jealous, that prevented him from seeing things very clearly.
Tell me what you think about Julie Stensky, the girlfriend. You mentioned that she was a sociopath and a narcissist. What do those terms mean? We throw those terms around,
yes,
when we're talking about our exes, and to really define what that is and then how it applies to Julie.
In life we need empathy. We need a compassion for other people to understand where they're coming from. Otherwise, how can you relate to each other? She didn't have that ability. She was very egocentric, which means she was very self-absorbed. It was all about me. And her age was also a big factor. She was a student. She needed to go ahead and succeed in life as well. So she wanted to have a pleasurable relationship without having to worry about a child, because that was not her developmental stage in her life at that time.
Yeah, do you think, it seemed to me, and I think it seemed the same to our audience, that she was extremely manipulative. Is that part of the characteristics of someone who is a narcissist or a sociopath?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because, just to get on another topic, for leadership qualities, a lot of our presidents have that quality.
The narcissism.
What can I tell you? And they do very well.
Right.
But when it comes to a relationship, you have to be flexible. Everybody has their needs. And she did not have that ability to go ahead and see, well, wait a minute, if I really care for this person, what makes this person happy? What can I do for him? Because when you have that kind of feeling, it makes the other person want to be there for you even more. She didn't have the cognitive, the ability to think in those terms.
And these aren't excuses. It's just explanations. Is that fair to say?
That's right. That's the way she functioned.
Right.
She was no different with him than she was with herself. She saw the world in a way of, what can I get? What can I do for myself that's going to be best for me? And this is developmental as well. As we get older, we get more evolved and we bring more people into our lives, and the joy of giving is really much more than when we were younger and self-absorbed. So that is a stage of life as well.
So there's definitely something to be said for those studies of the human brain that show that, I think you just said 26 is the
Yes.
age where, so someone who's 17, this manipulative behavior, might that, so there's the question, if she's a sociopath, and we, you know, you've not examined her, so we can't say that for 100% sure, but if she's a sociopath and a narcissist, can that change between the time that you're 17 and the time that you're 26?
Yes, absolutely, because we're talking about tendencies. It's behavioral. And when you see things differently and when your thought process changes, so does your behavior. So she hasn't been in the world long enough to see what is going on and what's important to her. She only knows to take care of herself. She's been taken care of by her parents, and then she's taken care of herself. She's not ready, and who is at that age, to take care of other people.
Tell me about this idea from the defense that maybe Brendan wandered off by himself. A 3-year-old little boy who we've heard testimony was afraid of the dark. Is there ever a circumstance where that little boy is likely to do that and walk as far as has been described in this case?
Well, you're right. You know, we're talking about 3/4 of a mile. Right. And how far is that? I mean, even when I'm driving, I say I didn't realize it was so far. For a little boy to walk that far who's afraid in the dark, I mean, you know, give me a break. It's so obvious that this definitely could not have happened. And then, as you know, with the socks, that there wasn't anything there to show that he was walking, so maybe he was taken to that place. And of course, the fact that he may have been unconscious and not dead, we don't know that. Was he killed before that?
Right.
Was he unconscious and was he submerged in water and then that happened? This is still needs to be investigated as well.
And in a case like this, I don't get the sense from the defense that they're going to claim any sort of mental defect in this case, any sort of temporary insanity. If they were, what kind of interview has to happen with the defendant? What type of evaluation has to occur to make it so that you can really say with any sort of certainty that this is what happened?
Well, that's a very important question, because often when this happens, people lose a state of consciousness. They're so involved in their rage that they're blindsided by what they do. And because of that, when they look back, they can't even explain their own responses, because that is a person they don't know. That is someone that's foreign to them. So they're all of a sudden, they're normal, they're doing all the wonderful things. He was a wonderful father to this child, and I'm sure he has deep regrets about what happened.
If you look at the case in total, I think that you've told me, and you may have said this already on air, and I know you told me before, you think it's something that he should go to jail, but not for a first degree, not for a premeditated.
Absolutely, because there was no intent. He did not want to get rid of this child, and he did not really want to do it in a way where you see it was planned, because after all, you see the evidence. The evidence that he displayed was really not structured. He was all over the place. He called his mother first, and then he called 911 first. He didn't know what he was doing. This is not somebody who had preconceived ideas about what he was doing.
Let's talk about that 911 call. You know, he did not seem, to many of us, he seemed rather unemotional and
Yes.
removed. Is that normal for some people in moments of shock or emotional upset, or is that indicative of someone who is guilty?
Well, you know, he answered the questions with I a lot. He didn't say, my child, where's my child? I woke up. I. It was always about himself, as if he was trying to present himself in a certain image. When you're distraught, you don't care about what people think of you. You want to know, where's your child? Now, evidence has shown that his wife, his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, was in the background screaming. Looking,
his mother.
Was it his mother?
Yeah.
All right, somebody was in the background looking for this child in a way that showed
emotion.
Right. And caring and concern. That person was not involved with themselves. So anybody who has a child that's missing, I remember I have a daughter, I still have her. She was missing, and I was trying in Lake George, and I was trying to find her. And the police kept me from going into the mountains. And they said, no, you can't. And I was fighting to go there. That's usually the way people look at somebody who's missing, especially a child, whether it's a mother, whether it's a girlfriend, whether it's a wife. That's the reaction people would get if they knew that they had to do something to make themselves more comfortable. So the terminology that was used was suspicious.
When his insistence on using I as opposed to being
Yes.
concerned about his son.
Yes.
I want to ask you just briefly about Aaron Hernandez. There's some reports have come out yesterday. The Department of Corrections, it's 100 and somewhat pages. And I just want to touch about, he committed suicide. And there are reports now that he had become very religious during his time in jail. Is that something that lends itself to make you perhaps more likely to commit suicide if you're in jail, less likely, or is it completely nothing? And then the other question in the same vein is he had expressed some optimism since he won his trial. He talked about actually playing football again professionally,
Yes.
and talked about seeing his daughters with his daughter. With that type of a positive attitude, would you have expected someone to commit suicide?
Well, he believed in the afterlife. So that was something that sustained him. And actually, at the end, it made him very happy, almost as if he was looking forward to this. So his pain, which he was obviously having, was going to be diminished by him ending his life. And that's the way he felt he was taking care of himself. As far as religion is concerned, people often feel it's a way to gratify and to have meaning to life as well. So at the end, they feel that there was something worthwhile, and this isn't all there is. Reincarnation is what he did believe in.
Right.
And reincarnation is something that tells you, look, it's not over. You have other opportunities. Everything will be okay. And he also believed that he is not going to be punished at the afterlife. So it's going to be over, and he's going to be happy, and it's going to be a much better time for him as well.
Now, what about the looking forward to seeing his daughter and the possibility of getting out of jail and maybe even playing professional football again? Would that lend itself against, I know Jose Baez, the attorney for Aaron
Yes.
Hernandez, has said he's going to do a full investigation separate from the state's investigation because I'm assuming they feel like there's some inconsistencies, and this may be one. Does someone who seems to be looking forward to seeing their daughter the weekend following, are they less likely to commit suicide?
Well, a lot of this is delusional. When people face near-death experiences, they find that they're talking to their loved ones who are no longer here. And in a way, it's a huge comfort level, but it's something that helps them often when they know they're nearing death. So this delusional kind of thinking is something that's extremely comforting for him as well.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Frieda,
you.
for being here with us and for talking to us,
Thank
especially
you.
about the Criato case. It's so interesting
Yes.
to get your insight. What I want to do next is to talk about and play for you the video of, I think it's Detective Rhodes, reading Julie Stensky's blog. This is the blog where she talks about Brendan as being a mistake. It's going to be clip number 16. It's the blog where she talks about the fact that she didn't want to have anything to do with him and that she didn't want any kids of her own, and certainly lends itself to a conclusion, as Dr. Frieda had made, that perhaps she's a sociopath and perhaps she's a narcissist. So I think we have that clip ready. It's clip number 16. We will play that for you. We'll be right back.
Could you read that for us, please?
Tell you where we stand now. Okay. So how do you expect this relationship to work when you're tied down, bad, you refuse to look for and or apply legit solutions to your problems? You close up to me when you're angry or upset. You stab